This episode of NSCTV is brought to you by Leonora AAA, Bushrangers Brotherhood, Geelong Firearm Courses, Hunter Shooter Society of Australia, Auto Scratch, Kilsyth Outdoor Store, and the Ballarat Arms and Military Collectors Society. Welcome to another episode of NSCTV, and thank you to our patron supporters and our sponsors for making this possible. Victoria goes to a state election in November, so we thought we'd give some early coverage of the issues confronting shooters from an NSC perspective, and also looking at what some of the other organisations are doing, and also what you can do about it. So stay tuned. I'm with Peter Zabradak, the Vice President of the NSC. How you doing, Pete?
G'day, Neil. G'day, viewers. How is everybody?
With the coming election, I think shooters know that we're happy to have government deal with some of the aspects of our lives. We don't want them to become our parents, and we don't want them to. We want them to respect the community, which means respecting shooters, and to work with us. But that's not what we're getting. And Pete, you see this election as pretty much a milestone election for shooters. Why is that?
Look, Neil, I think this election's probably the most critical election for Victorian shooters, and probably the most important election since 1996. My prediction is, and a lot of other political commentators' prediction is, that we could well end up with Labor return with a minority government, which means that they will need to totally rely on the votes of the Greens to pass legislation in Parliament. It's a very, very strong possibility. So that in its own should send a chill down the spine of every shooter in Victoria. Because if the Greens are calling the shots on it and have got the government where they want it, it's bad news. Very, very bad news to shooters. It will almost mean 100% certainty an end to duck hunting. The Greens won't stop at just duck hunting. We know that. They will push for a ban on deer hunting. And ultimately, the push will come for a ban on all public land hunting across the state of Victoria. So basically, it will mean death, the death knell for hunting in Victoria.
Bear in mind that follows 4 years of having our gun shop closures, changes to our gun laws in Victoria, including the introduction of firearm prohibition orders, which are very broad in their application. We've had new safe requirements. We've had lies in Parliament about how shooters have been consulted on all of this. And as you said, there's been, I think, continual reductions in the duck hunting season in Victoria, which is leading in just the one direction.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, all the writing is there on the wall, that there is an anti-hunting agenda and an anti-shooting agenda, 100%. Okay. So you almost have to be blind or completely stupid not to agree that is the case.
Okay, let's just compare this a little bit to a few years ago in Victoria, where shooters actually were able to get specific policies from the major parties that supported shooting. This is a release from the previous Brax government in the mid-2000s, where they were releasing announcements that were very specific to supporting hunting and for driving. And we had a similar one from the Liberal Party, where again they were chasing the shooters' vote. That was them, which obviously won't happen. One thing which I will come back to in a minute is what the Brax government committed to, which was public land access for hunting. I'll come back to that. In recent weeks, we wrote to both sides of Parliament, and we asked them to address some very their views of restrictions on hunting. That was this one that we had on the list, and you've mentioned that. Further restrictions that they might have in mind, mandatory attendances being expanded to long arms, proficiency testing, if you get a license, and those things again they're concerns that the parties simply have not yet responded to. And we need them to be very clear. They're not even going to put that on the table, because at the moment the trend has been the opposite direction. The trend has been very much to just keep ratcheting things up. And one of the last two things on my list here, or our list, was the exclusion of shooting from the 2026 Commonwealth Games, which started with this year's Birmingham Games, where shooting was not part of it. And we need this government to be very clear that it supports shooting, and it will be announced for inclusion. The second phase of sports to be included won't be announced until after the election. We need that announcement to be before the election, because after the election is too late. And the last issue is range closures, because we've spoken with a number of ranges around Victoria which are having lease difficulties, and there are three fairly large ranges which are actually going to close. As far as we understand, there's a very large shotgun range which we'll probably be interviewing soon. There's a pistol range towards the south of Melbourne, and there's a rifle range out in the Yarra Ranges area. They, as I understand, have all engaged with politicians and ministers to try to get help, and Labor hasn't lifted a finger. They've done nothing to help those ranges. We need our ranges. So, just moving on, we've spoken a little bit about what we've raised with the parties, and there'll be a bit more to talk about that later. I didn't really want to call this out, but we have some organisations that are making claims about how they're going to approach the election. And I just want to address that, because they're making claims which I think are actually quite disingenuous, to be perfectly honest.
You can support NSCTV by becoming a subscriber at nsctv.com.au.
So what happened is that the Field of Game, AAA and ADA put together their joint announcement. But they're talking here about an initiative to improve public land access and management, safeguard game hunting, improving shooting facilities, ensuring robust consultation and promotion of shooting to the broader community. Now, on the first part, improving land public access, as I said, that was actually part of the 2006 announcement by the Bracks government. And there's nothing, I have to say, there's nothing new there. The improving shooting facilities is a reference to ranges to be able to improve them. Now, taking absolutely nothing away from that, and it's a good idea, it really is, but it's not new. This is actually a current government program in Victoria, which many ranges have already participated in, and they've had upgrades to their ranges. And that, again, is something that started in the mid-2000s, well before these shooting organisations actually became political in this area. There is nothing wrong with range upgrades. I think we fully support anything that improves what we have in Victoria, but I'd make the point that there is nothing new with that. The other issue is that robust consultation. Yes, that'd be great, but we've got the Final Consultative Committee, and we saw during the year announcements around the gun laws that were changed, and how Paul Edbrook, an MP, told Parliament that shooters were not only consulted, but basically helped write some of the laws that were put in place. Now, those laws include changing our gun safes. If we have a look at the advice that the AAA put out at the time, this is what they said. They said that the changes to the laws were not onerous or excessive. So you've got politicians who said that shooters were consulted. You've got a shooting organisation that said there's nothing onerous about it. They're basically saying, just cop it. We'll put our hand out for money from the government at the election. We want you to cop it. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, consultation is wonderful when you surround yourself by people that are basically all yes men, and that will tell you exactly what they want you to hear.
Yeah, no, it was terrible. It wasn't consultation. As I said, we actually challenged that. We dug deep, and we found that in fact there was dissent within the the group that Mr. Redbrook, member Frankson, actually manages. The other thing that came out of this advice was that the organisations were going to work with each other and are going to support candidates at the election. Who do you think they're talking about there, Peter?
Oh, look, there's no doubt that there is a strong tie-up between the Shooters, Fishers, Farmers and SSAA. To give Jeff some credit, the private members bill that he put forward about appearance laws was good. But then by the same token, historically speaking, private members' bills never, ever get up in Parliament for the simple reason that they require support from other parties. Okay, now indications are, and when we became aware of the private members' bills, I reached out and spoke to political contacts in the minors, also spoke to political contacts in the opposition, and there had been absolutely no approaches from Borman or his office to try and ensure support. So at the end of the day, Borman's private members' bill on appearance laws, I would call it out and say it's nothing more than a political stunt, and a cheap political stunt, okay, designed to appear that Borman's actually doing something for shootings and the shooting community in the run-up to an election.
It's still early days. We're only still few, 2 or 3 months away from the election. So we'll be bringing more news on the election as it approaches. We've actually got quite a lot to bring forward. We've got a survey which has gone out to the sitting MPs, which will actually produce some really exciting news that we're going to bring shortly. And we'll be surveying the other political parties a little bit later on because they're still trying to get their candidates in place. We're providing voting advice, how to vote advice through our website, which will be released in November. It has to be done that late because you've got parties that have to nominate their candidates. We've got to understand the preference deals and the policy platforms of those parties, which is not out now. So we can't provide those positions now. So Peter, what can shooters who want to get involved in the election and actually do something to help this cause, what can they do?
Look, it's very simple. They just go and see their MP, go and see the staffers, remind the staffers, okay, that they deal with. They won't get to meet the MP. Very, very rare for that to happen, especially in run up to an election. But they need to let the staffers know exactly how they feel, and they can do that via email. They can do that by going to their local members' electorate office and doing face-to-face contact. And believe me, all of that stuff does get fed back to MPs. There is nothing more critical than an MP's sensitivity in the run-up to an election. If an MP feels that there's a mood in the electorate that's against them, that's the best possible time that you're going to get some results or some action.
And I guess the other thing that shooters can do is to, in addition to joining and sponsoring us if they're running a small business, is follow us on our Facebook page, join our email list, just make sure that they get our updates as they will be coming out over the next few weeks. And also making sure they just don't vote the way they always have. It's so tempting and easy. I'm sure people their mind just turns off when they go and get the ballot paper. They tend to, habits by heart, they tend to just keep voting the way they really need to pay attention to what's happened to them, not only in terms of the personal lives being locked down so many times, but also what the government that they're voting for or the side that they're voting for wants to do to the shooting sports. So we really do ask that they do tune in, they get the information, and they think before they vote.
Absolutely. As I said earlier, this election will be critical because I believe that this election will be determining the future of shooting sports in the state of Victoria. And at the end of the day, as we all know, once politicians take things away, you don't get them back. We saw that and we've seen that time and time again. So as I said, this election will be the most critical for shooting sports' future in the state of Victoria. And we do have the numbers to make a difference. There are some shooters that have indicated, oh, we're only a small number and we're a small minority and we can't make a difference and all of this sort of stuff. And sometimes it can get, the feeling that you're feeling a little bit hopeless or underwhelmed. But believe me, that is actually not the case. We can make a difference. We do have the numbers. The numbers just need to be marshalled the right way.
And small votes actually do matter. I mean, the history's got quite a few instances of where seats have been won and lost on less than a handful of votes, 1 or 2 votes. I think one of the
absolutely.
I think one of the former state premiers of South Australia, I think he kept his seat by 2 votes. Then he became state premier.
Yeah, look. Yep, absolutely. Even here in Victoria, there's been instances where seats have gone down to a dozen votes. Across the line. That's how close they have been, literally on the knife edge. So, as I said, it is critical and we can make a difference. If you love your sport and you love what you do, this is your opportunity basically to protect it and ensure that it lives. Because if you don't fight for what you have at the moment, don't cry about it when you've lost it.
Yeah. The other thing that shooters can do is we're raising money to fund the campaign, and if they go to our website, you'll find a red donate button on the top right-hand side, and from there, there's some choices. But we are running an election campaign fundraiser, so that money will be spent on basically getting the information out in those electorates, one way or the other, because that's what we do at elections. So we're looking forward to doing that again.
Absolutely. So, and we understand that things are tough at the moment. There's a lot of shooters out there that are doing it tough financially. There's a lot of problems with the employment market. We get all of that. But if you've got a few spare dollars that you can throw in, it goes to the cause. And as I said, the NSC is the only organisation that isn't beholden to anybody else. Therefore, we act as impartially as possible in the advice that we give and the work that we do. We've shown that repeatedly. I think our history's shown that, where we will go in there and fight for shooters' rights no matter what. And as I said, it's going to be a very, very busy period. It already has been. As I said, I've been in Parliament repeatedly. And no doubt there'll be a few more visits to Spring Street between now and the run-up to the election. But we're fighting hard, absolutely fighting hard to make a difference.
Sure. Okay, Peter, thank you for that. No doubt we'll be speaking very soon on the next instalment on the state election and other matters. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Neil. Cheers. Goodbye, everybody.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of NSCTV. And as always, make sure you share this with your friends. And make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already done so. We'll see you around.